Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of The Letter of the Law here at Bloomsbury Radio. This episode is also going out on the London Legal podcast through Hodge Jones Allen solicitors. Today the subject is asbestos, and specifically asbestos-related claims and workplace illnesses. We're delighted today to have Lorna Webster, a partner at Hodge Jones Allen solicitors within the Asbestos and Workplace Illness team. And Lorna will be speaking about the process of making a claim with regards to asbestos, the nature of workplace illnesses, and a whole bunch of other subjects related to this area. Good day, Lorna. How are you?
Hello.
Today? So, Lorna Webster's at Hodge Jones Allen solicitors here at Bloomsbury Institute, London. Hodge Jones Allen is just a 10-minute walk away. Lorna, could you tell us a bit more about yourself, your role within Hodge Jones Allen solicitors, how long you've been with the firm, some of your specialisms, etc.?
Of course. So I'm a partner within the Asbestos and Workplace Illness team at Hodge Jones Allen solicitors, and I've been working here since January 2020. I specialise in asbestos-related diseases, and I've been assisting people affected by asbestos illnesses to bring compensation claims for about 26 years now.
Thank you. And some of our listeners would have heard from partners and solicitors from Hodge Jones Allen solicitors in previous episodes, but there may be some individuals who are tuning in for the first time, aren't familiar with the firm. Could you give us a quick rundown of what Hodge Jones Allen solicitors takes part in terms of its work, in terms of its history?
Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors has a number of teams that assist people with their legal issues, and that ranges from asbestos diseases, other personal injury or medical negligence claims, criminal defence work, wills and probate, and many other areas of the law that people from all walks of life may need help with. Each area of the law that we cover has specialist teams, so all of our clients know they're in experienced hands. The firm was first set up in 1977, which is almost 50 years ago now, by Henry Hodge, Peter Jones and Patrick Allen. These three gentlemen were committed to helping individuals who otherwise would not be able to gain access to justice. Since then, the firm has grown, and we now have over 250 members of staff, and most recently being featured in the Times Best Law Firms 2026 list, which ranks the top 250 law firms in England and Wales. And obviously we're very proud of that. Everyone who works at Hodge Jones Allen follows the philosophy of helping people gain access to the law, irrelevant of a client's means or background, and this ethos has always been at the forefront of what we do. I personally am very proud to be part of the Hodge Jones Allen team.
Thank you, Lorna. And now the subject for today's conversation is asbestos and workplace illness. In a nutshell, Lorna, what is asbestos?
Asbestos is a raw material that's mined from the ground. The word asbestos itself comes from a Greek word for inextinguishable, which tells you that asbestos is fire resistant. Asbestos was used in our country extensively between the 1950s and 1980s, particularly for insulation and fireproofing purposes. The raw asbestos fibres mined from the ground can be moulded into so many different ways, including smooth sheeting, corrugated sheeting, cloth, rope and lagging. Asbestos used to be known as the miracle material due to its versatility and cheap cost. Most of the asbestos used in the UK historically was white asbestos, although blue asbestos and brown asbestos were also used in our industries. Over my 26 years of helping asbestos disease sufferers, I've had numerous clients tell me that their employers told them that white asbestos was safe, and it was only the blue and the brown asbestos that was dangerous for health. This is wrong. All asbestos is dangerous for health, irrelevant of the colour of it. All asbestos use was thankfully banned in the UK in 1999. Therefore, only buildings built from the year 2000 can safely be assumed to contain no asbestos.
Okay, now if you've been exposed to asbestos dust, so it would have been quite a while ago, but if, regardless of that fact, whether it's been years, whether it's been decades, if you've been exposed to that asbestos dust in your workplace, when do symptoms tend to show up?
So many people have been exposed to asbestos dust, and most of them will not develop any ill effects on their health. However, for some people, the breathing in of the asbestos fibres can lead to serious health conditions much later in life. Asbestos diseases take at least 10 years to show as symptoms after the exposure, but more often it's in the region of 50 to 60 years after that exposure to asbestos dust took place that the symptoms will first appear. and there's no upper limit on that 60-year time frame. I should really stress that not everybody who has been exposed to asbestos dust will develop an asbestos disease. However, about 2,500 people in the UK develop mesothelioma every single year. Across a 10-year period, that's about 25,000 people who have developed a very serious asbestos-related condition. I really do find that a shocking statistic. On top of that, there are people who develop asbestosis, asbestos-related pleural thickening, and asbestos-related lung cancer.
Thank you, Lorna. If you're tuning in just now, we are speaking with Lorna Webster, a partner from the Asbestos and Workplace Illness team at Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors. If the subject of our conversation is something that is of interest to you, or it relates to yourself or a loved one, and you'd like to get in touch to learn more about your legal rights, or perhaps to even make an inquiry, then you can get in touch with Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors via phone on 03300 294 446, or via email at billradio, that's BILRADIO, at hja.net. So back to Lorna now. The conversation today is around asbestos and workplace illness. Let's turn to that second part of the subject, Lorna. What does the term workplace illness specifically mean? And what kind of workplaces, trades and job roles might come within its definition?
So the term workplace illness refers to any health condition that has developed as a result of exposure to a nasty substance during the course of employment. Unfortunately, there are still substances being used in workplaces today which can cause significant health issues if proper precautions, such as protective clothing and masks, are not used. As with asbestos diseases, some conditions will take many years to materialise after the exposure to the substance took place. Our team at Hodge Jones Allen specialises in pursuing compensation claims for those affected by workplace illnesses, including conditions such as silicosis, which is caused by breathing in silica particles when cutting, grinding or blasting materials such as stone, concrete or sand, as well as other conditions like occupational asthma and dermatitis. In relation to asbestos diseases, many of my clients include tradesmen such as plumbers, electricians, carpenters, laggers and boiler makers. However, we regularly also act for those who have had other jobs, including firefighters, train drivers, nursing staff, those who have worked on ships, teachers, factory workers and office staff. Exposure to asbestos dust can happen in so many ways at work that it really is an endless list of job roles of those who could have been affected.
And what would you say, Lorna, to those who might argue that asbestos problems are very much a thing of the past, that it's not something that really is of concern in today's age?
Although asbestos use was banned in the UK in 1999, it is very much an issue today, and unfortunately it will be for many years to come in the future. Asbestos diseases usually take many decades after the exposure to asbestos dust to produce symptoms. The clients I'm working with today were typically exposed to asbestos dust in the 1960s and 1970s, and that's over 50 to 60 years ago. So those with symptoms today, such as a cough or breathing difficulties, which don't go away and who believe they may have been exposed to asbestos dust in the past, should seek medical advice and ensure they let their treating doctor know that they were previously exposed to asbestos dust, no matter how long ago that exposure took place.
So are you saying that there are buildings today which could be exposing people to asbestos dust?
Yes, that's right. There's many buildings today that still have asbestos materials within them, and worryingly, some of those asbestos materials are not being identified, or even if they have been identified, they're not being properly managed. For example, it's estimated that approximately 85% of schools have asbestos materials within them today. Those asbestos materials will deteriorate and will become damaged over time, and there are just not the funds available to sort this out. When you think about how many people pass through a typical school in a typical day, including staff, pupils, parents and visitors, that's an awful lot of people who potentially are being exposed to asbestos dust from unmanaged asbestos materials installed many decades ago. This situation is replicated across the country in many schools, and the same sort of situation occurs in other public buildings which people regularly visit. When asbestos materials become damaged, the fibres can escape and be breathed in by people in the area. That person may be one of the unfortunate ones who many years later develops an asbestos-related disease. So asbestos is definitely not a problem of the past or one that is going away anytime soon. It's very much a present problem, and more awareness really needs to be out there about asbestos being dangerous for health. Mesothelioma and other asbestos diseases will continue to be a problem for many more decades yet and will affect thousands more people, so it really must not be considered an historical problem.
Thank you, Lorna. So if you're listening now and many of the issues that we are raising and discussing are of relevance to you or to a loved one or someone you may know, then please do get in touch, whether it's to make an inquiry or to learn more about your legal rights. You can get in touch via phone on 033 00 294 446 or via email at billradio, that's BILRADIO, at hjA.net. So if you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Lorna Webster, partner at Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors from the Asbestos and Workplace Illness team. So let's continue the conversation, Lorna. You spoke about, in your previous answer, mesothelioma. That's a term that we often hear about, but many of our listeners may not be familiar with what it exactly is. And the other issue that comes up about asbestos is linked to talcum powder. We often see this being spoken about in the news, but people may not know about what the exact link is. So for our listeners, Lorna, could you talk about what mesothelioma is and what's the link to talcum powder use?
So the most serious asbestos-related disease is mesothelioma, and it's a cancer that is caused by exposure to asbestos dust. It can also be caused by talcum powder use, and this is because some talcum powder and some products containing talcum powder, such as powder makeup, could contain asbestos fibres. This is because quite often asbestos mines will be close to talcum powder mines, and the asbestos fibres float across to the talcum powder mine. When the talcum powder is mined, generally no filtering is carried out to specifically remove those asbestos fibres, meaning the asbestos can end up in a bottle of talcum powder or in a makeup product with talcum powder as an ingredient. This is still happening today, which is shocking, and so some of these talcum powder users will sadly be future mesothelioma victims. At Hodge Jones Allen, we've assisted many clients to secure compensation for mesothelioma caused by historic talcum powder and makeup use.
That's remarkable, Lorna. If you want to read a bit more about that specific subject area, then you're welcome to visit Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors' website. That's www.hja.net, and on that page you'll see more information about the link between mesothelioma and talcum powder use, which worryingly is still happening today. Now, Lorna, what types of cases are covered by your team and which you can help members of the public with?
So we advise on compensation claim options following a diagnosis of an asbestos-related disease, as well as ensuring that our clients receive the DWP benefits that they're entitled to for their asbestos-related condition. There are 4 recognised asbestos-related diseases for which compensation claims can potentially be pursued. These are mesothelioma, which is an asbestos-related cancer, asbestosis, asbestos-related pleural thickening, and asbestos-related lung cancer. In some very specific and limited circumstances, it may also be possible to bring a claim for pleural plaques.
So you've just highlighted some of those areas. Could you briefly explain what each of these conditions are and how they might come about?
Mesothelioma is an asbestos-related cancer. Most mesotheliomas are lung-related, although some mesotheliomas can affect the lining of the heart or the lining of the stomach. For men, there's also testicular mesothelioma. Now, testicular mesothelioma is very rare and it accounts for less than 1% of mesotheliomas. But I currently have a client with testicular mesothelioma, and he isn't my first client with this type of mesothelioma. So men really do need to be aware of this very rare condition. Unfortunately, there's no cure for mesothelioma, although there are some treatments available to help manage symptoms and extend life expectancy. But the treatments are most effective if the condition is diagnosed early. Therefore, I really would encourage anyone who has symptoms such as breathing problems or a cough which just won't go away to seek medical advice promptly and to ensure their doctor knows they've been in contact with asbestos in the past. As mesothelioma doesn't just affect the lungs, I'd also encourage people to ensure their GP knows there has been previous exposure to asbestos dust and have that noted in their medical records, so asbestos diseases can be considered by the medical professionals when someone seeks medical advice. Asbestosis is a different asbestos-related disease, and this is a fibrosis of the lung which has been caused by asbestos exposure. True asbestosis requires a very high level of exposure to asbestos dust, and so I would typically go through with a client exactly how their contact with asbestos dust occurred and how often to assess if they have the required level of exposure to asbestos dust. Asbestosis is usually a slowly progressing condition and can range from causing minor symptoms such as a cough through to being fatal in some cases. Asbestos-related pleural thickening is a relatively minor asbestos-related condition. It typically causes a cough or maybe some breathing issues. Pleural thickening does not develop into a more serious asbestos-related condition, but if someone has developed asbestos-related pleural thickening, they could also develop another asbestos disease, and so careful medical monitoring is required. There's also asbestos-related lung cancer. Now, many lung cancers are assumed to be smoking related, but I'm absolutely convinced that some of those lung cancers are actually caused by previous asbestos exposure. Due to the long period of time between exposure to asbestos dust and symptoms developing, many of my clients are of an older generation, and many of those have a smoking history as a result of not knowing that smoking was dangerous for health for many, many years. If there's a smoking history and a lung cancer develops, that link is often made between the two, but the question really needs to be asked as to whether the lung cancer is in fact caused by previous asbestos exposure. For those people who have lung cancer which they believe is caused by their smoking history, but in fact it has been caused by their asbestos exposure, they are potentially missing out on compensation and DWP benefits.
Thanks, Lorna. If you're joining us on the Letter of the Law today or through the London Legal Podcast, we're speaking with Lorna Webster, partner at Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors in their Asbestos and Workplace Illness team. If any of the subject areas that we're discussing is of relevance to you or to a loved one or someone you may even know, and you'd like to get in touch to find out more or to perhaps to make an inquiry, then please do get in touch via our phone number, which is 033 00 294 446, or via email at billradio, BILRADIO, @hja.net. And if you just want to learn more about asbestos and workplace illness and what Lorna does, then visit www.hja.net. That's the website for Hodge Jones and Allen Solicitors, and you can find out much more about the subjects that we're talking about today. So Lorna, what would your advice be to someone listening to this conversation who has been diagnosed with any of the conditions you just spoke about, or they know a loved one who has?
If anyone has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, asbestosis, asbestos-related pleural thickening or asbestos-related lung cancer, I really would encourage them to seek legal advice on compensation options and DW benefits entitlement. We also work closely with asbestos support groups, and so we can signpost a client to their local group for non-legal support. Every asbestos disease has its own set of legal rules in relation to bringing a compensation claim, and so it's essential to seek legal advice from someone who has experience in this area of the law and who knows those rules inside out. Mesothelioma is a cancer caused by asbestos exposure. Many mesotheliomas are caused by exposure to asbestos dust at work many decades ago, but some mesotheliomas are also caused by other exposure such as personal talcum powder use. At Hodge Jones Allen, we consider all potential sources of exposure to asbestos dust, and we advise our clients on the best option for the client we are working with, as we very much appreciate that what may be the best route for one client may not suit another client. All of our advice is very much tailored to the individual in front of us.
And what sort of compensation can be obtained in an asbestos-related disease claim?
A successful compensation claim will bring compensation for the asbestos disease itself, as well as financial losses and expenses incurred to date and into the future. The amount of compensation for the condition itself depends upon which illness has been diagnosed and how it's affected the person in their day-to-day life, as well as any treatment undertaken, the person's age, and whether it will reduce their life expectancy. Mesothelioma, for example, can attract compensation in excess of £100,000. Compensation for losses and expenses will typically cover things such as care and assistance provided, travel and parking costs in attending hospital appointments, aids and appliances to help around the home, loss of income, and any other expense which has been incurred purely because of the asbestos-related disease. For living mesothelioma clients who are successful in their civil compensation claim, we also obtain a court order that guarantees if treatment is recommended by their treating oncologist, but that treatment is not available on the NHS, then the cost of that non-NHS treatment to be carried out privately will be completely covered by whoever has paid the compensation, which is usually an insurance company. If activated, this court order can be worth a lot of money on top of the significant compensation payment already received by the client. I've had clients where this court order has been activated and the private treatment costs have exceeded £200,000. Obviously, most people don't have a spare £200,000 sitting in their bank account to cover private medical costs, and so it really is a huge relief and peace of mind for mesothelioma clients who receive this potential treatment option as part of their compensation package. In addition to the compensation itself, we also ensure clients are receiving whatever DWP benefits they're entitled to for their asbestos disease, and if not, we will assist with those applications. We also work with local asbestos support groups, and so we can signpost a client to their local group for non-legal advice.
So those with a valid asbestos disease claim could potentially receive a high sum of compensation. But if they're interested in bringing forward a claim, how much will it cost them in legal costs? And importantly, how much will your firm, Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors, take from that compensation for legal costs?
So we have a policy at Hodge Jones Allen that there is absolutely no financial risk to any asbestos disease client in pursuing their compensation claim. Put very simply, if the claim is successful, our legal costs and expenses are paid by whoever has paid the compensation to the client, which is usually an insurance company. If the claim is not successful, then the client owes us nothing at all. There's no catch, that's how it works in the asbestos disease cases that we deal with. We obviously explain to every client how the funding works in their individual case, but the bottom line is there's no financial risk for a client in any asbestos disease compensation claim. As such, there's nothing to be lost in someone seeking legal advice after the diagnosis of an asbestos disease, such as mesothelioma, asbestos-related lung cancer, asbestosis or pleural thickening, but there's potentially a lot to be gained financially.
We're speaking about asbestos and workplace illness with Lorna Webster of Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors, a partner within the Asbestos and Workplace Illness team. If you're joining us on the Letter of the Law or the London Legal Podcast, you can find out much more about the area of asbestos and workplace illness on the website www.hja.net. That's the website of Hodge Jones Allen Solicitors, in which Lorna Webster, our guest today, works. Now, if someone's been listening to this conversation, Lorna, and they think that there's a potential asbestos-related compensation claim, whether it's for themselves, whether it's for a parent or a loved one, what are the initial steps that you take when you start working with a client who wishes to pursue that claim?
We would usually meet with an asbestos disease client at a place convenient for them, which is often their home. We obtain all the information we need to be able to fully advise them on the options they have. Once a plan of action has been agreed for the compensation claim, we get on with things on behalf of the client. Our asbestos and workplace illness team are very aware that our clients often have serious conditions and a reduced life expectancy, and so we aim to take away the stress of the legal claim away from them so they can concentrate on their medical treatment and other matters. We know what we're doing and we have decades of experience and knowledge behind us, and so once a plan has been agreed with a client and the paperwork signed, we press on with matters. We obviously keep our clients informed about all the key steps taken in their claim, and we support them throughout at every stage. We get to know our clients and their families very well throughout the legal process, and we do everything we can to make pursuing an asbestos disease compensation claim as straightforward as possible for every single one of our clients. And we always deal with them with professionalism and understanding of the potentially life-changing diagnosis they have received.
Now, what time limits are involved for bringing an asbestos-related disease claim, and what is a limitation date?
A limitation date is the legal name for the deadline within which someone has to issue their claim at court. For asbestos disease claims, the usual rule is that someone must issue a claim form at court within 3 years of the date they knew or ought to have known of the asbestos disease diagnosis. That 3-year period usually starts to tick after the diagnosis is given to a client by their doctor, but sometimes this date may not be clear-cut. There are some very complicated rules in relation to asbestos disease claim time limits and claims which involve someone who has passed away from an asbestos condition. And so it really is important to seek legal advice as soon as possible after an asbestos disease diagnosis or after someone has passed away from an asbestos condition. There is the possibility of obtaining a court's discretion to allow claims to proceed beyond that normal 3-year period. So even if someone thinks their claim may be out of time already, I really would encourage them to seek advice from us, as we can check and we can give advice. And again, it's all at no financial risk to the client.
And what about if a client has to go to court? In your experience, Lorna, will the client usually be required to go to court?
Nearly all of the asbestos-related claims settle by way of negotiation before a final court hearing takes place. Many claims require court proceedings to be issued to keep the pressure on whoever is being pursued, but that doesn't mean a final court hearing will take place. If, however, in those rare circumstances a final hearing does need to take place, we will assist the client, and obviously we're not just going to say to them, turn up at court. If it's a mesothelioma client and they're not well enough to attend court because of their symptoms or treatment, we can obtain medical evidence to excuse them from attending court. In other words, we fully support any client who needs to attend court, but most cases won't go that far.
So the subject today is asbestos and workplace illness. We're coming to a close with our conversation with Lorna Webster, partner at Hodge Jones Allen solicitors. Lorna, if someone's listening to this and they're thinking about making an inquiry about, and they have an asbestos disease, or someone they know has an asbestos disease, then what advice would you give to anybody who is listening to this podcast and thinking of making an inquiry, potentially starting a claim?
Please do contact Hodge Jones Allen to get some initial advice. There's nothing to be lost in seeking the advice, but potentially compensation, DWP benefits and justice to be gained.
And how can a listener get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
So if you'd like to make an inquiry and learn more about your legal rights, please do get in touch with us via phone on 03300 294 446 or via email at billradio, that's BILRADIO, at hja.net. And if you'd like to learn more about the specific work that I do and the cases I deal with and the work my team undertakes to help clients affected by asbestos-related diseases, please visit our website at www.hja.net and look up my profile under Lorna Webster.
That's LORNAWEBSTER. Thanks, Lorna, for your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to add for our listeners?
I would just like to thank people for listening to me speak about compensation claims relating to asbestos diseases. I've really only touched upon the surface of this area of the law, but I hope you found the podcast informative and interesting. Do check back again for upcoming podcasts in other areas of the law that we specialise in at Hodge Jones Allen solicitors.
So, as Lorna was saying, if you'd like to make an inquiry and learn more about your legal rights in relation to asbestos and workplace illness, then please do get in touch with Hodge Jones Allen solicitors, and that can be via phone on 033 00 294 446 or via email at billradio, BILRADIO, at hja.net. It's goodbye for now, but we look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of The Letter of the Law and the London Legal Podcast.